Hello. I know I said in the last video I would make the next one, this one, for activities, but I think we should spend one more video on views and then activities, specifically with list views. Since most apps have lists, we'll just quickly convert what we have into using a list view. And if you take a look at what we had last time, we have this app where you just kind of type things in and it appends it to this text view, and you just have one view showing this huge string. But let's take this a step further and say we wanted to use an actual list view to display each row of data and make it so you could click maybe one item from that list view. So to do that, if we go back to the XML file, we can take a look at this, and what we're going to do is remove the text view. And we'll replace that with a list view. Alright, so if you ever define items through XML, which you'll probably do as you get more experienced, you'll see this layout width and layout height in every XML view item. And what that says is you only have two options really. Well, three. You can define a custom value in your dimensions.xml, which we'll get into that later. Or you can use the wrap content or match parent values. And wrap content is just going to fill up the amount of space it needs to show that view. And match parent is going to consume the entire parent. So what we're going to use for the list view is a match parent for width and height. And we're going to move this to the bottom so it doesn't push the other views out of the way as it extends. And we can make this close as well, since it's not going to have anything in it. And the ID will just be, it'll follow the same format we've been using, activity underscore main list view. Alright, so now let's go to the activity and let's remove the text view that doesn't exist anymore. Usually this would complain, but because we haven't rebuilt the app, the IDs, the activity is not aware of this ID being removed, so it's not going to complain yet. But as soon as we rebuild it, it'll realize that this text view is gone, and it won't compile. So now we'll define the list view. And I'll erase the text view. Alright, and I'm just going to erase these few lines down here. Okay, so the way a list view works is it needs an adapter, and there are tons of ways to do this, and we're going to get into some pretty complex ways to use a recycler view and its adapter eventually. But for now, let's learn the basics and use an array adapter for this list view. And the array adapter has this generic type it takes for the kinds of data you want to display, and we are going to display strings. And from here, what do we need to provide? We'll be using this constructor, which takes the context, So think of context as the location of the app right now. Basically every activity implements or is a form of context. So you can reference the activity that you're currently looking at as the context of the app. So if we do this, and then the other value it wants is a resource file. It doesn't say it unless you look at the code. So if we look here, this is the constructor we're going to use, and it needs a resource ID for a layout file. So that Android by default has a layout file you can use for this example, and that is inside of android.r.id or .layout. Simple list item 1. So this is provided already in Android, so we can reference this, and if we command click it, we'll see it's just a view item that is a text view. Let's see if it'll show us where it is, and that's, if you press this button here while you have a file open, it will show you where that file is located, or the source file, and you can see that's inside of, it's using the Android API 24, and if the phone running this app is a different API version, it's safe to assume that this file exists in there when you reference it here. If it does not exist, if you're using something that's not in an older API, the IDE will complain and give you a warning saying that it's not available in API version whatever. So right now, when we made this app, we supported APIs 19 and above, so we can assume that API 19 to 24 have this layout file. And the last thing we need to provide is a list of strings. So let's make a new list, array list. Okay, and we'll just provide that in there. Alright, so now we have our adapter, and the reason we needed this was this is kind of the controller for the list view, and it is responsible for looking at how many items are in this array, creating a text view for each item, and displaying it inside of the list view. So if we set this, every list view has a set adapter function, and we can use this adapter inside of it. Okay. So now, when the button is pressed, we're going to add the text to this adapter. And you do that with adapter, or not adapter, sorry. And you do that by taking the items it's using, the list it's using, and adding to it. List items.add text. And if you ran this, you would not see any changes happen, because you need to then notify the adapter that its data has changed. So we'll do that right here. We'll do adapter dot notify dataset changed, and that will tell the adapter that something in its data has been added, removed, or modified. Let's just redraw the list view. So if we ran this now, just press button, you see it gets added below now. Droid, and it's hard to tell right now, but you also have like a little divider beneath each item, and they're clickable, so each item can be clicked. They don't have any actions, but you can see that they highlight. Alright, and let me see, move the keyboard. So that. Now let's make it so we can remove items by long clicking them. And that is done by adding a listener to the list view. So list view dot set on item long click. There's two long click listeners. There's the on long click, and that's if you were to press the entire list view, and then there's the item long click, and that's if you long click an individual item on the list view. So just like with the on click listener, we can type O, and it'll suggest which one to use, which interface to use. Hit enter, and it'll autocomplete it. If the list view had some other parent, had a parent view that was also listening for long clicks, then the boolean you return from here would matter. And if you returned false from here, then the parent view would try to run its on long click, and if you returned true from here, the parent would not be notified about the long click. So we're going to return true and let this know it was handled. And now you also see that this provides 4 parameters. The most important one you'll need is the position. So if we did list items dot remove position, and then we notify the adapter again, that should remove the items. If we run this, so just press that. If I hold click that, you see it gets removed. And another thing to notice here is if you have a huge list, it will fill the screen and become scrollable. And that was a quick intro into ListViews. Next video will definitely be about switching and adding activities to your app. If you have any questions or comments, write them below.